Bacon belonged by right, if not by fact, to that brotherhood, which includes all those who study the occult sciences. The voices, if such sound can be termed a voice at all, of a spiritual apparition once heard can hardly be forgotten. That of a pure spirit is like the tremulous murmur of an Aeolian harp echoed from a distance. The voice of a suffering, hence impure, if not utterly bad spirit, may be assimilated to a human voice issuing from an empty barrel. The empty laugh of the scientific nursling or of the fools of fashion has done more to keep man ignorant of his imperial psychical powers than the obscurities, the obstacles, and the dangers that cluster about the subject. The cautiousness, bred of a fixed habit of experimental research, the tentative advance from opinion to opinion, the weight accorded to recognized authorities, all foster a conservatism of thought which naturally runs into dogmatism. The price of scientific progress is too commonly the martyrdom or ostracism of the innovator. Stubborn materialism is often more stupidly bigoted than religious fanaticism itself. Towards science as a whole, as a divine goal, the whole civilized world ought to look with respect and veneration, for science alone can enable man to understand the deity by the true appreciation of his works. Science is the understanding of truth or facts, says Webster. It is an investigation of truth for its own sake and a pursuit of pure knowledge. If the definition be correct, then the majority of our modern scholars have proved false to their goddess. Truth for its own sake. And where should the keys to every truth in nature be searched for unless in the hitherto unexplored mystery of psychology? Alas, that in questioning nature so many men of science should daintily sort over her facts and choose only such for study as best bolster their prejudices. It is admitted on all hands that from time immemorial the distant East was the land of knowledge. Not even in Egypt were botany and mineralogy so extensively studied as by the savants of archaic Middle Asia. Sprengel, unjust and unprejudiced as he shows himself in everything else, confesses this much in his Histoire de la Médecine. And yet, notwithstanding this, whenever the subject of magic is discussed, that of India has rarely suggested itself to anyone, for of its general practice in that country less is known than among any other ancient people. With the Hindus it was and is more esoteric, if possible, than it was even among the Egyptian priests. So sacred was it deemed that its existence was only half admitted, and it was only practiced in public emergencies. It was more than a religious matter, for it was considered divine. The Egyptian hierophants, notwithstanding the practice of a stern and pure morality, could not be compared for one moment with the ascetical gymnosophists, either in holiness of life or miraculous powers developed in them by supernatural adjuration of everything earthly. By those who knew them well, they were held in still greater reverence than the Magians of Chaldea. Denying themselves the simplest comforts of life, they dwelt in woods and led the life of the most secluded hermits, while their Egyptian brothers at least congregated together. Notwithstanding the slur thrown by history on all who practiced magic and divination, it has proclaimed them as possessing the greatest secrets in medical knowledge and unsurpassed skill in its practice. Numerous are the volumes preserved in Hindu convents, in which are recorded the proofs of their learning. To attempt to say whether these gymnosophists were the real founders of magic in India, or whether they only practiced what had passed to them as an inheritance from the earliest rishis. The 7 primeval sages would be regarded as a mere speculation by exact scholars. The care which they took in educating youth, in familiarizing it with generous and virtuous sentiments, did them peculiar honor, and their maxims and discourses, as recorded by historians, prove that they were expert in matters of philosophy, metaphysics, astronomy, morality, and religion. Says a modern writer, they preserved their dignity under the sway of the most powerful princes, whom they would not condescend to visit, or to trouble for the slightest favor. If the latter desired the advice or the prayers of the holy men, they were either obliged to go themselves or to send messengers. To these men no secret power of either plant or mineral was unknown. They had fathomed nature to its depths, while psychology and physiology were to them open books. And the result was that science, or Mashagiota, that is now termed so superciliously, magic. First of all, their cosmogony shows how erroneous has been the opinion prevalent among the civilized nations that Brahma was ever considered by the Hindus their chief or supreme god. Brahma is a secondary deity, and like Jehovah, is a mover of the waters. He is the creating god, and has in his allegorical representations 4 heads, answering to the 4 cardinal points. He is the demiurgos, the architect of the world. In the primordiate state of the creation, says Pollier's Mythology des Indus, the rudimental universe submerged in a water, reposed in the bosom of the eternal, sprang from the chaos and darkness. Sprang from this chaos and darkness, Brahma, the architect of the world, poised on a lotus leaf, floated or moved upon the waters, unable to discern anything but water and darkness. This is as identical as possible with the Egyptian cosmogony, which shows in its opening sentences Ator, or Mother Night, which represents illimitable darkness, as the primeval element which covered the infinite abyss, animated by water and the universal spirit of the eternal, dwelling alone in chaos. As in the Jewish scriptures, the history of the creation opens with the Spirit of God and his creative emanation, another deity. Perceiving such a dismal state, he hears a voice. Direct your prayer to Bhagavant, the Eternal, known also as Parabrahma. Brahma, rising from his natatory position, seats himself upon the lotus in an attitude of contemplation and reflects upon the Eternal, who, pleased with this evidence of piety, disperses the primeval darkness and opens his understanding. After this, Brahma issues from the universal egg, infinite chaos, as light, for his understanding is now opened, and he sets himself to work. He moves on the eternal waters, with the Spirit of God within himself. In his capacity of mover of the waters, he is Narayana. The lotus, the sacred flower of the Egyptians, as well as the Hindus, is the symbol of Horus, as it is that of Brahma. No temples in Tibet or Nepal are found without it, and the meaning of this symbol is extremely suggestive. The sprig of lilies placed in the hand of the archangel who offers them to the Virgin Mary, and the pictures of the Annunciation have in their esoteric symbolism precisely the same meaning. We refer the reader to Sir William Jones. With the Hindus, the lotus is the emblem of the productive power of nature through the agency of fire and water, spirit and matter. Eternal, says a verse in the Bhagavad Gita, I see Brahma the Creator enthroned in thee above the lotus. And Sir W. Jones shows that the seeds of the lotus contain, even before they germinate, perfectly formed leaves. The miniature shapes of what one day as perfected plants they will become. Or, as the author of the Heathen Religion has it, nature thus giving us a specimen of the preformation of its productions, adding further that the seed of all the phenogamous plants bearing proper flowers contain an embryo plantlet, ready formed. With the Buddhists, it has the same signification. Mahamaya, or Mahadeva, the mother of Gautama Buddha, had the birth of her son announced to her by Bodhisattva, the spirit of Buddha, who appeared beside her couch with a lotus in his hand. Thus also Osiris and Horus are represented by the Egyptians, constantly in association with the lotus flower. These facts all go to show the identical parentage of this idea in the 3 religious systems, Hindu, Egyptian, and Judaico-Christian. Wherever the mystic water lily or lotus is employed, it signifies the emanation of the